Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons, and welcome back to the channel that brings power gaming to the next level. Today on the Doctor Spell Prognosis, we are talking about the spell Time Stop. It is a 9th level spell, usable by sorcerers and wizards, and we are giving this spell an S. In my opinion, it does a great deal that can actually end combats. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I have another video out. All right. Time Stop is a 9th level spell that takes one action, has a range of self. It only is a verbal component. It is instantaneous, kind of. We'll talk about that. You briefly stop the flow of time for everyone but yourself. No time passes for other creatures, while you take 1d4 plus 1 turns in a row. So it's kind of random. You could roll low and only get 2 rounds. You could roll high and you get 5 rounds. So you should plan on what you're going to do for 5 rounds and 2 rounds, and then kind of fill the in-between up with a blend of what you're going to do for 2 rounds and what you're going to do for 5 rounds. However, during that time, you can use actions and move as normal. So you get full turns. You get 2 to 5 full turns. The spell ends if one of the actions you use during this period or any effects that you create during this period affects a creature other than you or an object being worn or carried by someone other than you. Now, what does that mean? If any effects that you create during this period affect. So if you rolled a hit against a creature, that is affecting them. I would say it has to affect them directly. Any effect, anything that is going to affect them and cause them to make a saving throw, that's affecting them directly. Placing a creature inside something without a saving throw or roll to hit, probably not directly affecting them. So in addition, the spell ends if you move to a place more than 1,000 feet from the location where you cast it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't teleport away, but if you teleport away and it's more than 1,000 feet, then yes, you got away, but the spell ends at that point. This is a good bad guy getaway spell, because they can do that. I would suggest doing that last. There is a certain order in which you should do things. All right, let's talk about some pros and cons for this spell. It is an action. That's a pro. It's only a verbal component. That's a pro. And you get 2 to 5 rounds of full actions. That is an action, a movement, a bonus action, and a reaction if you can use it. But you can do all 4 of those things if you can do it. Cons for this: you cannot affect other creatures or worn objects. So that is worn or carried by someone other than you. If they're not worn or carried, then you can affect them. You can do whatever you want with them. And you can't move more than 1,000 feet. But you can do that if you want to get away. So this could be a panic button for the party. Well, it could be a panic button for a member of the party, or it could potentially be a panic button for the party to get away, or it could be a panic button for a DM to have a big bad evil guy get away too. So I think one of the best uses for this is to think about non-concentration spells to use, because remember, you can only have one concentration spell up, and you could put one concentration spell up, but you can only put 1 up. And so if you're going to do that, it should, you should figure out when you want to cast it in the time that it takes. Okay. And if you are a sorcerer, you should think about casting this spell as a quicken spell on your turn as the last thing that you do. So we can look at that really quick. So a sorcerer can quicken spells. Now, the rules state, you can go to the player's handbook because it talks about spell casting and the time it takes to cast spells. Casting a spell, bonus action. A spell cast with a bonus action is especially swift. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast the spell, provided you haven't already taken a bonus action this turn. You cannot cast another spell during the same turn except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. So I would suggest using your action to cast a cantrip, and then using your bonus action to quicken cast and time stop. I think that is a thing you could do, and it fits within the rules. And that way, you do get a little bit extra damage if you can. Now, what are some spells to think about when casting time stop? Well, if you want to do a bunch of damage, Autoluke's Freezing Sphere and Delayed Blast Fireball are 2 spells that you could cast. Now, let's look at Delayed Blast Fireball first. First, Delayed Blast Fireball is a concentration spell. So, if you cast this, you're stuck with it, and you're not casting any more concentration spells. So, Delayed Blast Fireball, 7th level spell, of which, if you're a wizard or a sorcerer, you only get 1 slot. Here's your 9th level spell, 8th level, 7th, and 6th. You only get 1 of these. So you cast this spell. We've gone over this spell before. This is probably one of the better uses of this spell. You cast this spell, and it starts at a base of 12d6, and it just sits there. And if at the end of your turn the bead is not yet detonated, it increases by a d6. So if it's touched before the interval has expired, the creature touching it must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, it blows up. Blah, blah, blah. So it can last up to a minute when the spell ends, either because your concentration is broken or because you decide to end it. Okay? So you can end it when you're coming out of your time stop. Or you could end it, you could just end it as the last thing that you possibly do on the last round that you're in time stop. So it starts out at a 12d6. So if you've got 2 rounds of time stop, then you can cast this right off the bat, and it will then blow up as a 13d6. Now, if you cast this and you've got 5 rounds, then it starts out 12. On the second round, it goes to 13. On the third round, it goes to 14, 15, and then 16. So it will blow up as a 16d6 fireball when you end with the last thing that you do is the time stop. Now, in the meantime, you could be casting Autoluke's Freezing Sphere. Here's this spell right here. We've gone over this spell before. It is a 6th level spell. So you could cast Delayed Blast Fireball first, and then Autoluke's Freezing Sphere second. And so you can move the spear forward on the second round, have it detonate if you've only got 2 rounds, or you can refrain from firing the globe after completing the spell if you wish, and then it's a sling. And so at any time you could fling it, and it shatters on impact. You don't need to hit. You don't need to roll to hit, but I think you do need to use an action to fling it. But at any time, you or a creature you give the globe to can throw the globe or hurl it with a sling. It shatters on impact with the same effect as the normal casting of the spell, which means it still has a 300-foot range and a 60-foot diameter and all that. And it does 10d6 damage. You get a 6th level slot. You've cast your 7th level slot for Delayed Blast Fireball, and you have an 8th level slot, which means that you now have you could have a 10d6 Freezing Sphere, a Delayed Blast Fireball, which could do up to 16d6, and an 8th level Autoluke's Freezing Sphere for another 12d6. So at this point, we're up to 38d6 damage, and that's in 3 to 5 rounds, possibly. So those are spells that you could think about doing as well. Force Cage has been brought up. I've seen this brought up before. This you need to talk to your dungeon master about. It doesn't require concentration. There is a saving throw for trying to teleport out, but you just bring this cage into existence. It's not affecting anything. It's not affecting any creatures, and you can put it around something, and So it's got bars in it. Now, I would contend that this might give somebody cover behind it, but you can always, throw the sphere. Things inside will be affected by the sphere because it's a radius. And delayed blast fireball, you can put the delayed blast fireball bead in the sphere and then stop concentrating on it, and it will go off. So those are some ideas for spells that you can do. Now, you also need to think about spells that you could cast that could buff you, and you should be thinking about spells that don't use concentration but can last for quite some time. These are all the spells for sorcerers and wizards that do not require concentration that could be lasting more than you have in your time stop. Blink is a good one. That's a good one. Grease could affect creatures, so I would avoid that one. Jump. A lot of the illusion spells. Let's see. Next page is going to be things like Fire Shield. You don't want to do Charm Monster, Charm Person because those will affect things. Crown of Stars. That's another one. You create these stars and then you can throw them later on or have them launch and they do damage. Things like False Life. There's a lot of different options for this. If you wanted to cast something like, let's say, Greater Invisibility, which I believe requires some kind of concentration. So let's go to that. That is something that I would think about maybe. Yeah, that requires concentration. So you might want to think about casting that last or in place of a delayed blast fireball. You can cast Summon. So, and there are higher level summons that you could cast as well. Summons, not a lot of conjuration spells, but some summon spells. You can use some of your racial abilities or your class abilities if you have them, particularly as a sorcerer. And, you can kind of swap and think about all of these different things. But for the most part, I just went through here and I filtered out spells that require concentration. So no concentration, and then I did Sorcerer and Wizard, and I racked and stacked them by duration. And so here's all the spells that have a duration that you could think about using. That, most of these have a one-action casting time, so you could cast them in addition to doing the Force Cage and the Autoluke Sphere and the Delayed Blast Fireball if you have an extra round. I mean, Delayed Blast Fireball first, Force Cage, Autoluke Sphere, and then you basically got one round left, for something like See Invisibility or True Seeing or Etherealness, something like that might not be a bad one. That's a 7th level spell, though, so you got to stick with the spells that are lower level, maybe Faithful Hound, but something that is a little bit more buffy. So, just kind of go with those ideas, and I think, but all in all, this is a spell that does a ton of damage. Well, by itself it doesn't, but it can be used to set up tons of damage in addition to buffing yourself or, which we didn't really go over this, getting away. So, you could cast this, drop a Delayed Blast Fireball and Autoluke's Freezing Spheres, and then teleport away. And those spells could be deployed at that point. All right, that is what I got for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.